Thanks for joining us and welcome to a BIMA Awards showcase of some of the award-winning entries of the BIMA Awards from 2025. If you didn't know, the BIMA Awards are the UK's longest standing and most prestigious digital and tech awards. Established in 1985, they've set up the gold standard in digital excellence for 40 years, recognising the work in British digital that pushes boundaries and creates real impact across businesses, culture and society. And I'm Johnny. I'm on the BIMA Awards Council, and I'm also Chief Experience Officer at Bernadette, which is part of VCP, which gives me a wonderful inside track and exclusive access to some wonderful people who created something that won big last year, which was Daisy versus the Scammers. So it's great to have you with us today, everyone. Hello. Could we do some quick intros of who you are and what you did on the project that is Daisy versus the Scammers that won last year? Should we just go this way around?
My name is Morten Legarth. I'm a creative director. Ben and I came up with the idea originally, and then we actually also did a bit of prototyping and stuff like that before we handed off to the engineers to do the real job.
Yeah, I'm Ben, and what he said.
I'm Lottie, one of the planners on the project, looking at effectiveness of the original brief, etc.
I'm Liberty, and I'm also one of the strategists on the project, and I work in Faith, which is our AI collective as well.
And I'm Phil, head of technology, and it was my team that's responsible for actually building it.
Wonderful. And what did we build? Should we have a little look at a video of what it was?
Ma'am, if you're aware of that and you don't know how to use the Play Store application, you're going to lose all of your money, ma'am.
Oh dear, that sounds quite alarming. I'm just trying my best here, you know. The spinning circle is still going and I'm worried about my money, but I really don't want to share anything like that. Hello, scammers. I'm your worst nightmare.
There is a new weapon in the fight against phone scammers.
Now, let me introduce you to Daisy here.
An artificial intelligence granny.
Daisy's job is to play dumb.
She's been designed to annoy the scammers, and she keeps them on the phone for ages and ages.
To waste those scammers' time to make sure they're not targeting someone else.
How clever.
Very clever.
What?
The scammers go insane.
It's nearly been an hour! For the love of...
Gosh, how time flies.
The three key components are a speech recognition module. The second one is an LLM module. And the last part is converting that response into a realistic voice. And all three of those need to happen within a few hundred milliseconds. We used number seeding to get Daisy's number onto scam call center databases. Then all we had to do was wait for the phone to ring.
It's showing me a picture of my cat, Fluffy.
It's showing you the picture of your cat, Fluffy.
I'm just trying to have a little chat.
Stop calling me dear, you stupid...
Got it, dear.
Okay, dear. Yes, dear.
Holy this is amazing.
Your computer is on right now?
No, I think it's off at the moment. I use it mostly for looking up knitting patterns and, oh, the occasional recipe for scones. I could share my recipe for a lovely...
Give me, ma'am. I'm not interested in your...
Mustache, scammers to scam and all that. Speak soon, scammers.
Brilliant. I don't get bored of that video. But everyone, what's the backstory? How did we end up building an AI granny to battle scammers for O2?
Okay.
I think it really started, well, we had been working with O2 for a really long time as an agency. So we kind of knew some of the challenges they were facing. And we did know about scamming being a massive issue. We watched a lot of YouTube. Some of us live online. So and on YouTube, there is a whole category of scam betas. And basically what they do is they listen in sometimes to scam calls and then they intervene, basically. And after having watched a whole bunch of that stuff, we listened and we really learned how horribly these scammers, they don't just steal money, basically. They also talk to old people in a really nasty way. So that's basically where the idea came from. It was like, okay, you know, why couldn't we create an AI granny and have them talk to that and then waste their time so they couldn't actually waste real people's time.
And what was really cool was seeing how people reacted to this content online. It was already like a subgenre. We kind of knew that people were engaged because it's just something that affects all of us. If you haven't had a scam call, you certainly know someone who has.
I think also what's an interesting kind of insight is that AI was the perfect use case for scam baiting specifically because it doesn't sleep, doesn't eat. Whereas like if a human did it, you're obviously wasting lots of time with someone. So it was quite good. It's quite a savvy move.
Yeah, and it came off the back of, I mean, O2 were doing a huge amount of work on scamming. It's a topic they've been talking about lots kind of behind the scenes. They've got AI interventions. They've got lots of technology behind the scenes that customers didn't know about. So it meant that because of a vast amount of people using O2 numbers, actually, it meant that their customers thought, well, O2 is part of the scamming problem. O2 numbers are being used for scams. Therefore, you're actually facilitating this. You're causing this. You're making this worse. So we're sort of in a situation where O2 was doing a huge amount behind the scenes to sort the scamming, and yet the customers thought they were part of the problem. So we had to really kind of find a way to fight back and in a way that felt very different to the category. Because we're talking a lot about, if you look at EE or Vodafone or the other kind of, I guess, brands in the category, they're just doing top tips. They're just doing kind of victim blamey stuff of how not to be scammed. Whereas we wanted to find a solution that was already in the zeitgeist, that was, in a way that we're talking about, that actually fixed the problem rather than just going, oh, here's how to stop yourself getting scammed. It's like we just sort of flip scripts a little bit.
You're also competing with the powerful narrative of the media. Do you know what I mean? All of those headlines are the things that cut through fear, headlines, this, that, and the other. So when you're talking about kind of like rational commitments to AI initiatives for anti-scamming or call blocking, it just doesn't cut it. You need something that cuts through that noise.
I think also at the moment we knew like some people were fighting back, but it was all individuals. So it felt like, why not a brand take on this mission? And O2 obviously is the perfect brand for that because, like people are almost blaming them for being called up on their phone, things like that. So instead of it just leaving it to individuals online, we can take on that job and basically do it and make it much bigger and make it more effective.
It was also at a time when there was an awful lot of fear about AI and how it was going to be used for nefarious purposes. And it was a lovely example of actually using AI for something positive, something good for the community, as well as protecting those.
So talking of lovely, everyone's fallen in love with Daisy, haven't they? You can't help but smile when you hear her talk, no matter what she says. What is it that made her the perfect character to beat the scammers then?
I think relatability is a big part of it, and also just the sort of the fun of the old lady being an AI and fooling these scammers. I think that's a big part of it. But we needed to make sure she was relatable and something that people could almost recognize as their granny, even though she's an AI. So I think that really helped. I think the fact that that people think of AI as something cold and hard, and then obviously we turned that into something much more warm and much more humorous. I think that really resonated quite well. It's a really nice way to talk about AI. Like Phil said earlier, lots of negativity around AI. But if you could take that really cold, hard thing and actually turn it into something warm, and then the cold hard thing actually became the scammers, which are human. So there was quite interesting sort of dynamic about being the humans were the bad guys in this case, and the AI was actually the good.
And it was really core to the kind of social media format that was already out there. Schadenfreude is the thing. People seeing these scammers getting unstuck and weaponizing like the people who are considered to be the most vulnerable in the space, and flipping that on its head and turning Daisy into this uber weapon was something that people really love.
That's what I love about it. It's like you can subvert that stereotype of an old vulnerable lady on the phone at home, and actually she becomes this kind of this kind of weapon.
So let's unpack that a little bit more then and talk about the design of her as a conversational interface. Usually these things are built to streamline services. We've obviously done it the complete other way around, and we've designed her to waste scammers' time. What went into that? How did we design her to do that?
Well, she needed a backstory. As you say, like most LLMs are there to try and efficiently answer your questions. We had to build it out totally the other way around. She needed to be this little mini Turing test which actually convinced people she was real. So she needed stuff to talk about. So we needed to, within her backstory and within the personality design, we needed to give her, where did she come from? Who was her family? Who were her mates that she liked to play bridge with? What other hobbies did she have? She really likes lemon meringue pie. Everyone got round the table, and any memory they had of their gran went into the pot, and that became Daisy.
Yeah, another thing we need to recognize is Jim Browning, who was kind of the inspiration for this, but also he had years of experience doing this. So he was very, very generous with his time and really helped us figure out exactly how these scammers work and what are some of the sort of things that you can sort of play on in terms of making sure that they stay on for as long as possible. So his help was really good in, like I said, basically understanding how scamming works and making sure that we can keep them on as long as possible.
It was very much a case of slowly drip feeding them enough information to keep the scammers engaged. You don't just want to put a block up and try and delay too much, because they'll leave, and you want to keep them on as long as possible. So it's a small drip feed of somewhat relevant information and keeping them on the hook for as long as you can.
So is there a technical side to that as well as a design side to this to make that believable?
So as Ben said, it's going against what a lot of the LLMs try and do, which is try and be incredibly efficient. We had to look at, in human conversation, you have ums and ahs and utterances that fill the voids in all of those spaces. Those are more challenging to do with both the LLMs and the voice models and to sound authentic. So we've got a lot of time into that. We also had to keep the latency down to make sure that it was responsive. You don't want a long pause and a delay. But counter to that, when you're dealing with someone who is slightly older, there are more likely to be those delays. So you do want to introduce some of that artificially. So there's a lot done to test that and verify that it did sound authentic and it sounded like you could be talking to your granny.
Well, latency was our biggest challenge throughout the entire thing. I mean, let's be honest, when we started to do the first prototype, it was nowhere near up to mustard, but we just knew that the rate of progression in the different parts of the AI system meant that we knew it would start to coalesce. And you need a little bit of luck because it did all come together, right at the right time. But there was another reason for picking an elderly woman was not just to play into the unconscious bias, is the fact that it is perceived even by viewers or people who are interacting with a campaign that there may be a little bit of slowness to respond. And the fact is, a lot of these scammers also work from far off countries, so they would expect a little bit of delay. So we lent into all of these things to make the whole thing.
Yeah, we had to actually wait to release it until the technology was good enough.
Okay.
So I think having a really good relationship with the client was really important here, because we knew that, like Ben was saying, we knew that the technology would catch up.
Yeah.
But we also knew that it had to be good enough when we did launch her. So yeah, I mean, we worked with O2, and then we had to actually postpone it a couple of times to make sure that the tech was actually working.
Right, and that is what was holding us back then. How convincing it was. So
yeah, I mean, the physical tech was one thing. The other thing was the voice. So at that time, there were voice models, and they did exist, and some of them were all right, but they were all trained on voice actors, so they all sounded like someone presenting really well. Yeah, and that didn't really work so well for conversational AI. If you call an old lady and she speaks like that, that doesn't sound realistic. So we actually had to spend a lot of time finding a real old lady, and and then spend a lot of time talking to her and getting lots of training data, so we could train a new model that sounded a lot more like a real person.
Amazing. So Daisy won big across many award bodies. I think you guys had quite a lot of fun over the last few months attending various ceremonies in lots of wonderful places, and the BIMAs was no exception. Lots of Bs here. They're not just a collection from over the years, they're just for Daisy from last year. So it's done really, really well. and it included winning the BIMA Grand Prix, which was very exciting. Why do you think the work has been so well received, and why it's travelled so well across all these different awards and award bodies?
I think lots of reasons. I think because people, as we've already talked about, really emotionally respond to the idea. I think people go, "That's a fantastic technical solution to a problem." You know, the build itself is so robust, and if you speak to her on the phone, she really does. It's kind of, I think, because people are cynical always about this type of ideas, and then they see her or they speak to her, they experience her, and you go, "Oh no, this is legit. This sounds like a great old lady." So I think there's that emotional resonance with the idea. You want to like it, and then from a kind of effectiveness and results point of view, it works on so many levels. I think it had brilliant kind of PR metrics, awareness. It traveled all over the world. It got on, everything from the Hindustan Times to the New York Times to globally. It had mass reach, but also it had behavior change implications and business implications. So you can see that people actually, they learn more about scamming, they learn how to protect themselves, they're more aware of the problem, and then they change their behavior, they start reporting forward numbers. So you can see that, yes, it's a brilliant idea. People respond to it emotionally. People think it's funny and clever and charming, and they kind of love Daisy. And then you can see results for the brand as well. So it's creatively brilliant, but also from a kind of an effectiveness point of view, very satisfying because it moved the needle for the brand too.
But if you look at it just as a system, it's mainly audio, as in so why did we need to create her visually? And that's because she needed to be the front woman for this entire campaign. So you can see where she starts landing in lots of different categories, from in terms of the technical build thing to the fact. I mean, she won awards for best new influencer. You know what I mean? So she spread wide.
Nice.
She did.
Nice.
Yeah, I think it is really interesting, that world building point of if I'm being honest, I kind of underestimated how important all those details were, like the charm that she had, the edit that we used on socials versus a different platform. It's so interesting that we built this world around her, even though actually she was just a system that was a voice, as you said. But all of those small details made people really love her. And then again, to Phil's point earlier about the AI for good, at the time, the narrative was very negative. It was very, technophobic, I think, in lots of ways. And this was AI for good. And actually, we had basically 100% positive sentiment.
Positive,
So, which is pretty amazing for something that's talking about AI, which people are scared of.
I think also the fact that it's real conversations, I think, made a lot of difference. I think people really, because that's when we did the film in the end, obviously we took all those real conversations and then we sort of put her face to them, really, because obviously she's not actually sitting now. She's just a voice. But I think the interesting thing is those were real conversations. And when people hear her respond back to slightly flippantly to a scammer who's getting pissed off or whatever it is, I think those real moments actually really helps sell it. I mean, when we've showed the case study, people usually laugh whenever they hear some of those bits.
Yeah.
And that sort of, I think, shows it all, that people have that emotional response.
Yeah. Trickiest question of the interview: what advice would you give to anyone hoping to win a BIMA this year or next?
I think it's have a good idea. I think, well, I mean, at the end of the day,
We'll end it there.
In the end of the day, the point is, all this technical stuff, all that stuff, it wouldn't work if the idea wasn't really good to begin with. Honestly, so having something which just has a creative idea at the heart of it. Creative technology is called creative technology for a reason. It's not just called technology. You need to have a really good idea to begin with, and then build this whatever you're building around it.
And within the discourse of AI, there are so many people who are doing really, really great technical work. Showing how this technology is starting to create new workflows and to be integrated into statics and video, and you can make an ad out of it, and that's great, and it's genuinely impressive. But you can't lose sight of the fact that the stories have to be great, or the technical implementation of connecting different services can lead to more creative solutions than just, AI can do that now. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's why again Daisy resonated.
Yeah,
really.
it's like it was AI. Obviously, it's an AI idea, but it's so human because it's solving such a visceral human problem that everybody recognizes with a character who is so recognizable as well. So, I think it's yes, absolutely have a great idea, but have a great idea that solves a really important problem. I would say I think that's what made this so successful. People recognize the problem, resonate with the problem, and then see that we're kind of using technology creatively to kind of solve that problem. So I think that's part of the strength of the idea, as well as being really clear on what we're trying to achieve. It's not just experimentation for experimentation's sake, which has its place and can be brilliant, but I think the reason it was so meaningful is because it's meaningfully solving something.
And spot those little social connectors. The fact that scam baiting was an existing genre of content meant that we knew, number one, we knew it was a problem that affected everyone. We also knew that people wanted to engage in it. I mean, we had stories of people who were going, oh yeah, I've wasted a scammer's time before. I'm just going to go pop the tea on. I left them for 20 minutes or whatever. That's interesting.
Yeah.
It was a niche, but it was a very popular niche. And when you see that, you think, okay, if we then can find an interesting way to tell the story, we can make it beyond the niche and make it much more broadly appealing.
I think also this is quite practical advice, but what was helpful in terms of like telling the story and what we wanted out of it is like picturing what a case study of this idea would look like and thinking about like what's the message takeout that we want people to think, where are we putting it, what's the kind of big metrics, like how many scammers do we want to scam, etc., etc. So like painting that full picture to kind of sell it in as well, I think is helpful.
Yeah, right.
The other thing is just to be not constrained by your current technology. So I think what worked really well with us is being able to tightly work our technical teams with the creative teams as one unit, knowing that the technology might not quite exist or might not be quite right at the moment, but we can see on the trajectory that it will be, and this will be something that will be able to be on the bleeding edge and release as soon as it is ready, rather than trying to react once the technology has been announced and once it rolls out to everyone. So we were able to get there very quickly.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
That wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Thank you very much. So thank you, everyone, for listening. Remember, the deadline for final entries to the awards is Friday, the 17th of July. And I think you'll see some things on the screen now, like a QR code. That's it, everyone. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciated it. Bye.